Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brittany of BrittanyJJones.com. In today's video, we are going to be sewing. We're going to be sewing along to the new McCall's. This is McCall's M8535, and I'll be sewing view A on this pattern. Let's go ahead and get started. Again, we're going to be sewing along to McCall's M8535, and I'll be sewing along to view B on this pattern. For fabric, I am using this red crepe back satin. And for the lace portion, I'm going to be using this black lace here, and I'll probably use a contrasting thread. That way you will be able to see the stitching of the lace. Let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we need to do is go ahead and cut out pattern piece number 7, and this will be cut out of lace. Now, we do need a 7-inch wide piece of lace, but I only have this, what is this, like 4 inches? About 4-inch wide of lace here. This is what I'm going to be using, and it looks like it will be just enough. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to line up the top edge of our pattern piece right with the inner corners of the scalloped edge of the lace. So as you can see, the lace comes in, kind of dips here. This is where we want the top edge of our lace, right at these inner corners of the scalloped edge of the lace. So line those up like so. I'm going to grab my pattern weights. Once you have those matched up, and again, if you have a 7-inch wide piece of lace, yours would be a little bit longer than mine, but I'm just going to use what I have. Once you have that lined up there, now we're going to cut along the other edges of the lace, and we're going to make sure that we transfer the markings. So make sure to transfer this circle, which may be a little hard to do that, but let's just go ahead and cut the remaining pieces away. I may just place a pin in this right at this circle here and just let that be my marker. Or you can get a contrasting thread and just make a little thread tack here to indicate where the circle is. But I'm just going to hold that in place like so. Place another pin here to keep this together. And put this off to the side and start working on the rest of the pattern. Let's begin working on our straps. So with right sides facing, we are going to fold the straps in half like so. And we are going to stitch along the long edge at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Again, let's go ahead and fold it in half like so and stitch it in place along this long edge using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Do that for both of the straps. Once you have your straps sewn, you can go ahead and trim down your seam. Once you have them trimmed, you can go ahead and flip them right sides out. I'm just going to use my loop turner here. Go ahead and turn the other one out the same way, and then we can give them a press. Now that we have our straps sewn, we flipped them right side out and we've given them a press. Now we can go ahead and pin them onto the top of the bodice. So I'm going to grab some pins here. You should have transferred some markings for your placement, and also you should have a marking for an adjustable line. We're going to pin the one that had the 3 dots along the top. We're going to match those up along the edge. And go ahead and pin those in place. Once you have it pinned, we can go ahead and baste it in place right along those markings. All right, now that we have the straps basted on, I'm going to start working on one of the front bodices, and everything that we do to one, we're going to do to the other, but I'm just start working with one. The first thing that we're going to do is grab pattern piece number 7, and we're going to place it in place like so, and we're going to match up that small circle that we transferred. Okay, once you have it pinned, just again confirm that you have it pinned in the correct place, that your dots are matching up, and then you can go ahead and continue pinning the lace on, or you can also use clips if that's better for the type of lace that you're working with. Go ahead and clip or pin your lace together, and then we can baste this in place. All right, now that we have the lace basted on like so, now we're going to go ahead and grab our facing piece. You should have cut out 4 of your bodice pieces, or you could have cut out 2 of a lining if you had a lining that you wanted to use. But right sides facing like so, we're going to be stitching along the armhole. along the strap, and along the front at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Let's go ahead and pin it in place. Let's go ahead and stitch it now. After you have it sewn, we can go ahead and trim our seam. And over here, it's a slight curve. You may need to do some notches here to kind of clip out some of the bulk, but let's go ahead and trim it down now. Now that we have it trimmed, we can go to the sewing machine and do some understitching. It's important to make sure that you do your understitching on your facing and not on the right side that you want to be showing. Because I'm using the same fabric right now, I can go either way. But once it comes to this one, you definitely want to make sure that you don't have two fronts that look like this because you did the understitching on the wrong side. So just make sure that you do the understitching along the facing portion. Again, if you have another lining fabric, it'll be a lot easier for you to tell. With understitching, make sure that you have your seam allowance going toward the facing, and you're just going to be stitching, catching the seam allowance under. So you're going to be stitching really close to the seam, again, on the facing and the seam allowance only, not on the main front portion of the fabric. Let's go ahead and do understitching now. All right, now that we have it pressed, you want to go ahead and baste the lower edge of it together, the raw edges, as well as the side seam. You also want to do 2 rows of gathering stitches between the front edge and the notch. So go ahead and do a basting stitch, basting the lower edges, the raw edges together, as well as the side seam. And then do 2 rows of gathering stitches between the front edge and the notch. Go ahead and do those stitches now, and we can move on to the next step. We're going to repeat the same exact steps that we just did to the other side. So first, go ahead and grab the bodice piece. I'm going to turn it like so. And we're going to match up the raw edges of the lace as well as that dot. Match that up and pin in place. So this dot, it should meet up right here where the previous dot was on that lace. It should all meet up here together, and then we can pin that in place. This is what that looks like on this side here. Now let's go to the sewing machine and we can baste this in place first. All right, now that we have it basted on, it should look something like this. Now let's go ahead and grab our other facing piece. Place that right side facing like so. And now we're going to pin along the front, along the strap, and the armhole, same way that we did this side. I'm going to make sure that I stop my stitching here right at the dot. So let's go ahead and pin and then stitch this in place and a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, now that we have the facing sewn on, you do want to go ahead and give it a trim. And now once you have it trimmed, you can turn it to the inside, and you want to go ahead and do understitching the same way that we did for the other side as well. Make sure you have your seam allowance facing toward the facing, and let's go ahead and do some understitching now. All right, once you have it all sewn, it should look similar to this. This is what mine looks like here. And again, make sure that you have your understitching done as well, and you've done your gathering stitches as well as your basting stitch along the raw edges along the bottom and the side. Now let's go ahead and grab our front pattern piece number 3. Okay, with right sides facing, we are going to pin the bodice onto the front. We're going to need to pull on those gathering stitches to create gathers so that it fits right here, matching up that notch as well as the side. So let's go ahead and pull the gathers and pin this all in place. You also want to make sure that you match up your markings. Mine's kind of disappeared, so make sure that you transfer your markings onto the bodice as well. That way you know where everything needs to match up and meet. Once you have it all pinned in place, let's go ahead and stitch in a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then you want to stitch again 1/8 of an inch away from that first seam. So stitch first at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then stitch again 1/8 of an inch away from that first stitching, then you can finish off your seam with your serger or zigzag stitch. Let's go ahead and stitch it in place now. All right, once you have your bodice sewn onto the front, this is what mine looks like here. This is what it looks like along the inside. You can see I finished mine off with my serger. And so now you can give this a light press and we can move on to start working on the back facing. Next, we're going to start working on the back facing, which is pattern piece number 5. You should cut one of fabric on the fold and one of interfacing on the fold. Go ahead and fuse it together if you have not already, and then make sure that you transfer your markings onto the back of your facing piece like I've done here, and then you can finish off the lower edge of the facing as well. You can finish it off with your serger, a zigzag stitch, or if you just want to fold in 1/4 of an inch, you can do that as well and just stitch close to the edge. Let's go ahead and grab our back pattern piece number 4. Okay, with right size facing, we are going to take our back facing and place it onto the back like so. You want to match up your notches as well as your circles and pin in place. And what we're going to do is we're going to start stitching from the edge. You should have transferred 2 notches here for the straps. We're going to back stitch at 1, leave an opening so we can insert the strap, and then start back stitching at the other dot, and then go to the other side and do the same thing. Stop stitching at the first dot, leave it open so we can insert the strap, start back stitching at the next dot, and stitch all the way to the end. So let's go ahead and stitch the back facing onto the back now, right sides facing. All right, now that we have it sewn, this is what my back facing and my back pattern piece looks like. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to pin our sides together along the front and back right sides together. So grab your front pattern piece. We're going to put it with the back right sides facing. We're going to match up our notches and pin in place. Along the side, you should have transferred a small dot here, so make sure that you don't place this at the top of the facing where we finished it off at. You should have a small dot here. It matches up right here at that seam, so this should just go right to the top of the seam. The front should go right to the top of the seam right here at the facing and pin it in place there. Pin or clip the other side the same exact way. Again, make sure that you match up the small dots here along the side seam, match up those notches and pin. And then we're just going to baste this in place and then we can try it on. So go ahead and pin and baste it in place. Now that we have the side seams basted, I am going to take my straps, making sure that they are not twisted, and I'm going to place them between the opening that we left. So go ahead and find your opening. Is right here, and just go ahead and feed your strap through that opening and then pull that through. I am going to pin it in place just to keep it secure there. Same thing with this side, make sure that it's not twisted. Find your opening and then go ahead and just put the strap through. Now go ahead and try on your slip dress and see if you need to adjust your straps at all. If you need to pull some more in or let some out, go ahead and try that on and get the right adjustment for your straps. And then once you're happy with it, we can go ahead and finish stitching this close, securing the straps in place. Let's go ahead and try it on now. Okay, after you have tried on your dress, and if you like the placement, go ahead and finish stitching the openings closed here, secure them in place. Then we can trim down this seam and do understitching along this back facing piece. Remember, with understitching, make sure that you have your seam allowance going toward the facing, and then we're just going to stitch really close to the seam, securing the facing to the seam allowance only. You should not be sewing on the dress part, only the facing and the seam allowance. All right, now that we have done our understitching here along the back facing, this is what mine look like here. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to bring this back facing over the front like so, and then we are going to pin and then do our permanent stitch all the way down our seam allowance. Again, remember previously we basted the seam allowance. Now we're going to fold this over like so, and then we will do our regular machine stitch at a 2.5 going down the side seam. So go ahead and grab your pins. And again, right here along the top, we're just going to fold this over like so. And you can pin or clip this in place. All right, now that we have it pinned, we can go ahead and stitch using a 2.5 regular machine stitch all the way down our side seam. We can follow along with our basting stitch. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, once you have it stitched, you can see I finished off the edge with my serger. Now we can flip it to the inside and take a look at it. I do think I want to trim this top corner. I'm gonna trim some of this bulk off of this corner here. And let's flip this side out as well and take a look. So this is what that looks like here along the side. Now we can go ahead and give the back facing a press. Make sure it's all flat along the back. So go ahead and press the back facing in place now toward the inside. Okay, and now that we have our back facing sewn on, we've given it a press toward the inside. This is what that looks like here. Now let's go ahead and start to work on the flounce. For the flounce, you should have cut out 2. And with right sides facing, we are going to pin and stitch along both of the sides. So go ahead and open up your flounce pieces, match up your notches along the side, and we are going to pin pin the other side the same exact way, and then we're going to start stitching from the bottom of the flounce up to the top using a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Let's go ahead and do that now, and then I'm going to finish off my edges with my serger. All right, now that we have the flounce pieces sewn together, you can go ahead and give your seam a press. I still need to press mine. You also want to do 2 additional stitches. So along the top of the flounce, we're going to do a 1/2 inch stitch, similar to like a stay stitch. You just want to stitch a 1/2 inch all the way along the top edge at the top of the flounce. And along the bottom of the flounce, we're going to do a 1/4 inch basting stitch. This stitch is going to help because this is a really big circle hem. This is going to help us to ease in any fullness as we get ready to fold our hem in place. And so for the hem, we are going to fold up along the hem allowance and give that a press. And then you will open out that crease, take the raw edge and fold it to the crease, and then press that in place. And while you're pressing, if you see any fullness, then you can just pull up on this basting stitch along the inside to ease out the fullness, and then just continue folding the hem in place. Let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, once you have your flounce, you have done the hem, it should look similar to this. This was by far the most time-consuming part of this project so far, so I just wanted to mention that, but this is how my hem is looking along the inside. If you have any loose threads, you can go ahead and trim those. And again, just go ahead and do your hem along the bottom edge of the flounce. Once you have that done, we can go ahead and pin this top edge to the bottom of our dress. So here is my dress here, and I'm gonna match up my side seams. I'm gonna match up my notches as well, and I'm gonna start pinning this in place right sides together. If need to, while we are painting, if you need to place some clips onto the flounce, you can clip up to that 1/2 inch stitch, but do not go past it. So right here, I have a little bit of some excess fabric here that kind of needs to go into that. So I'm just going to place some tiny clips here. It's just going to spread the fabric out a little bit. That's going to allow me to pin that excess in place. All right, once you have yours pinned on like I have here, as you can see, I had to place clips around the entire thing to spread it open to add more space. So once you have yours pinned, let's go ahead and stitch it at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then you're going to stitch again 1/8 of an inch away from that stitch within the seam allowance, and then you can finish off your seam allowance with your serger. Let's go ahead and do all of our stitching now. Okay, once we have the flounce sewn on to the lower edge of the dress, this is what this looks like along the inside here. I have everything stitched, and then I finished off the edge with my serger. And so now you want to go ahead and press your seam going up. So make sure you have the seam pressed going in the up toward the top of the dress. And now we can go ahead and grab our lace. So again, this is a lace that I'm going to be using. I'm just going to unroll the width of the front and the back here. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that the lower edge of these inner corners of the lace, where the scallop edge comes in, we want to put that right along our stitching line here that we already previously stitched. So you want that to just be right over the stitching line. I'm going to bring it closer on that stitch, so when we sew, we're going to be stitching right into that seam, right on those inner corners of the lace. So let's go ahead and start to pin that in place, making sure that the inner corners of the scalloped edge of the lace is right here along our seam. I am just going to place this at the edge like so. When we bring it around, we'll fold it in, and it's going to take some maneuvering here. So let's just kind of get in here and get started with it. All right, once you have it all pinned on, it should look like this. Again, make sure that you have the inner corners of the lace right along that seam, and we're going to be stitching right on that previous stitch, catching in the lace along the inner corners. So go ahead and stitch that in place along the side here. Over here along the side, I have just folded in about 1/4 of an inch of the lace, and so I will stitch that down along the bottom. I will stitch it at the top, and then you can just slip stitch the opening of the lace. But for now, let's just go ahead and stitch this in place along the bottom hem, and then once we have that secure, we can stitch the top along those inner corners as well to secure the lace. Let's go ahead and do both rows of that stitching now. Okay, I have my lace sewn on. As you can see, I used the red stitching. That way you can still see it on the black lace. But you can see that I just stitched right here through the inner corners of the lace along the top and the bottom. Well, on the bottom, I stitched right on along that seam, and then along the top, I stitched right in the inner corner of the lace. This is what that looks like along the inside, as you can see. And so now we need to cut away this fabric here, not the lace. We're just going to cut away the fabric, that way to kind of be see-through behind the lace. We need to cut it away 1/4 of an inch from this stitch and from this seam. So 1/4 of an inch away and 1/4 of an inch away, just cut out the middle section, and then we will finish the raw edges off with our serger. So again, right here, we're going to trim away this fabric 1/4 inch away from this stitch and 1/4 inch away from this seam. Trim this fabric away, and then we can finish off those raw edges with either a zigzag stitch or a serger. I'm going to use my applique shears here or the duckbill scissors. That way I can trim these and not accidentally trim the lace. Okay, I have all the lace trimmed away, and so now I'm going to finish off the raw edges here with my serger. Again, you can finish it off with your serger or with the zigzag stitch. Let's go ahead and finish it off now. All right, once you have your seams finished, this is what it looks like along the inside here. I have mine finished off with my serger. You can go ahead and give everything one final press. And also on the side here where we overlap the lace, you want to do a slip stitch here to secure this piece of lace. So go ahead and get a needle and thread, and then you can just slip stitch this opening here closed on the side of your lace. Once you have that all done, you have just completed view B on McCall's 8535. Well, that is all for the tutorial, and I really do hope that it was helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down for me below. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on your notifications so you do not miss when the next video is up. Until next time, blessings everyone. Bye.